The world did not end with fire. It ended with a sound nobody could explain. A low, distorted crack that came from the sky itself, like reality snapping under pressure. 3 nights later, the impact site still burned. Not with flame, but with heat that refused to die. Commander Ethan Cole stood at the perimeter ridge, wind cutting across his face, staring down into what used to be a valley. Now it was a crater. Blackened stone. Melted earth. A perfect circular wound in the planet's surface, so precise it looked artificial. Except nothing human could do this. Behind him, floodlights hummed. Military vehicles circled the zone. Scientists argued in low, frantic voices near mobile labs. But Ethan wasn't listening anymore. Because something was wrong with the crater. It wasn't just destruction. It was waiting. Commander Cole, a voice crackled through his radio. Radiation levels are dropping again. This doesn't make sense. The core readings should still be lethal. Ethan didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the center. The heat shimmered there like a mirage. But beneath it, something darker moved. Not wind. Not collapsing debris. Something, breathing. He raised a hand slowly. "Do we have eyes on the center?" he asked. A pause. Then Technician Mark Davis replied, voice tight. "Thermal cam is glitching again. Same pattern as before. It's like something is interfering with the sensors." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Then we go visual." A silence hit the channel immediately. "Sir," Mark said carefully, "that violates containment protocol." "I said visual." 2 soldiers beside Ethan exchanged glances but obeyed. A drone lifted off from the ridge, descending slowly into the crater's throat. The live feed flickered onto the portable screen. Static. Heat distortion. Then. A shape. Buried half in molten glass, something was stuck in the earth like it had fallen from the sky and tried to become part of it. It wasn't metal. It wasn't debris. It was organic. A shell. Cracked open along one side. And inside it. Movement. "Zoom," Ethan ordered. The drone obeyed. The image sharpened. Inside the fractured shell, something small shifted. A limb, thin, trembling, pressed against the broken edge. Then another. And slowly, impossibly, it pulled itself forward. Mark stepped back. "No. No, that's not, sir, that's not a biological structure we've seen before." Ethan didn't blink. The thing inside the crater lifted its head. And looked directly at the drone. At them. Its eyes were not empty. Not animal. Not instinctual. They were aware. Too aware. For a moment, nobody spoke. Even the wind seemed to stop. Then the shell cracked further. A soft sound echoed through the crater, like glass breaking underwater. The creature slipped free. It collapsed immediately onto the scorched ground. Small. Weak. Barely the size of a child. Its skin shimmered faintly, reflecting no known spectrum of light, like oil moving across water. Its breathing was uneven, shallow, as if the air itself hurt it. Mark swallowed hard. It survived entry from orbital impact? "That's not possible," another voice whispered. But Ethan was already moving. "Hold your positions," he said firmly. "No one fires. No one moves unless I say so." "Commander," Mark warned, "we don't know what it is." Ethan cut him off. "We don't know what it is yet." Then the creature tried to stand. Its limbs shook violently, failing under its own weight. It collapsed again into the scorched earth. A pause. Then something changed. The ground beneath it shifted. Not cracked. Not collapsed. Changed. The blackened soil began to pale. Gray first. Then a faint, unnatural green. Mark stared at the readouts. "Sir, I'm getting a biological spike. That soil was dead, there's no microbial activity, but it's coming back." Ethan took a slow step forward. The creature turned its head slightly. Watching. Not afraid. Just aware. And then, in a motion so small it almost went unnoticed, it tried again to stand. No one spoke for several seconds after it moved again. The crater feed still flickered on the portable screens, but even the static felt quieter now, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The creature struggled to stand. Its limbs shook violently, not like an animal learning balance, but like something that had forgotten how gravity worked. It pushed against the scorched ground, failed, collapsed, then tried again. Each attempt was weaker than the last. Commander Ethan Cole stepped forward before anyone could stop him. "Hold fire," he repeated, more firmly this time. His voice carried a weight that cut through the hesitation in the air. No engagement. I repeat, no engagement. Behind him, Sergeant Mark Davis was already shaking his head. Sir, that's a direct violation of quarantine protocol. We don't know what that thing is. It could be. It's injured, Ethan said quietly. That doesn't make it safe. Ethan didn't answer. Because something about the scene didn't feel like danger. It felt like arrival. A second drone descended into the crater, stabilizing its feed. The image sharpened just enough to show details no one wanted to see too clearly. The creature's skin wasn't armor, as some had assumed. It was delicate. Almost translucent in places, like layers of living glass under stress. Its chest rose and fell unevenly, each breath shallow and forced. It was dying. Or something very close to it. Then it finally managed to stand. Barely. It rose on trembling limbs, swaying in place like a newborn animal. Its head turned slowly, scanning the broken landscape, the military perimeter, the floodlights burning into the night. And then it saw them. The human line. Armed. Armored. Watching. The creature froze. For the first time, it reacted, not with movement, but with awareness. Its head tilted slightly. Not fear. Not aggression. Recognition. Mark lowered his voice. It's tracking us. Ethan frowned. That's not tracking behavior. That's observation. Observation of what? Ethan didn't have an answer. The creature took one step forward. Then another. Each step left behind a faint change in the ground. Where its foot touched, the scorched earth did not remain burned. Instead, it softened. The blackened crust broke apart into fine gray soil. Then, impossibly, faint green threads began to spread outward like veins waking up after a long death. One of the junior scientists near the ridge cursed under his breath. That soil's been sterile for years. Decades. Nothing grows there. It's not growing, Mark said, staring at the readings. It's reviving. But there's no energy input. No catalyst. No known process. Radiation levels. Ethan asked. A technician checked quickly. Dropping. Rapidly. Sir, it's not just the crater anymore. The surrounding zone is stabilizing. Ethan looked down at the creature again. It had taken only 3 steps. And already the dead earth was changing. Then it stumbled. Its body collapsed halfway forward, catching itself with one trembling arm. A soft, almost inaudible sound escaped it, not a cry of pain, but something closer to exhaustion. Mark raised his weapon slightly without thinking. Sir, it's weakening. If it collapses completely and releases whatever that is. Whatever what is. Ethan snapped. Mark hesitated. The energy signature. The environmental shift. We don't understand the mechanism. If it's biological radiation, or quantum discharge, or... It's not a weapon, Ethan said. You don't know that. Ethan turned his head slowly. Neither do you. That silenced him. Below, the creature finally managed to straighten again. It was barely standing now, swaying as if the air itself was too heavy. Then it did something unexpected. It looked directly at Ethan. Not the drones. Not the soldiers. Him. The connection was immediate. Unmistakable. Ethan felt it like pressure behind his eyes, something subtle, not spoken, not transmitted through any known channel. A presence. A thought that wasn't language. But meaning. It wasn't words. It was feeling. Confusion. Pain. And something deeper underneath it. Recognition. Ethan took a slow breath. Do you see this? He asked quietly. Mark frowned. See what? The way it's looking at us. Before Mark could respond, the creature moved again. This time, it didn't step toward the soldiers. It stepped toward the center of the crater. And as it moved, the change in the ground followed it. Dead stone softened. Cracked glassy earth faded into dust. The barren crater floor, once completely lifeless, began to show signs of structure again. Not plants yet. Not life as they knew it. But pre-life. A readiness. The kind of soil that remembers what it once was. One of the perimeter engineers whispered, "This is impossible, this is reversing geological trauma in real time." Mark lowered his voice. "Sir, containment protocols assume hostile unknown biology. If this spreads..." Ethan interrupted him again, but softer this time. "If it spreads, what?" Mark hesitated. "We don't know." A pause. Only the wind moved across the ridge. Then Ethan spoke again. "Hold all units. No containment expansion. No defensive action. Stand down from engagement posture. Sir. That's an order. Reluctantly, weapons lowered along the perimeter. Below, the creature stopped. It stood in the center of the crater now, breathing harder than before. Its body trembled as if holding itself together required effort beyond physical strength. Then it sank slowly to its knees. The ground beneath it responded immediately, softening further, as if trying to support it. And in that moment, something changed again. A faint pulse spread outward. Not visible. Not audible. But every instrument along the perimeter registered it. A wave of environmental correction passed through the crater like a ripple through still water. And for the first time since impact, the world began to heal. By morning, the crater was no longer behaving like a crater. That was the first thing everyone agreed on. The second thing they agreed on was that nobody could explain it. Commander Ethan Cole stood inside the mobile command tent, watching live satellite overlays flicker across multiple screens. Every updated scan showed the same impossible trend. Radiation levels, falling. Soil toxicity, reversing. Atmospheric distortion, stabilizing. And at the center of it all, the creature. Still there. Still alive. Barely. Sergeant Mark Davis paced behind him, voice tight. We've rerun the sensors 4 times. There's no energy source feeding this. No thermal discharge, no radiation leak, no electromagnetic driver. It's like the environment is correcting itself. Ethan didn't look away from the screen. All being corrected. Mark stopped pacing. That implies intent. Ethan finally turned. It already showed intent last night. A silence followed that neither of them wanted to name. Outside, the crater perimeter had doubled overnight. Military engineers had reinforced containment lines, though no one had issued a clear classification for what they were containing anymore. Threat assessments kept returning the same result: unknown, non-aggressive behavior observed. Which somehow made it worse. Inside the crater, the creature remained where it had collapsed. But the ground around it had changed dramatically. Where there had once been burned glass and sterile ash, there was now soft, pale soil. Not fully alive, but no longer dead. Thin threads of green, too early to call them plants, were beginning to spread outward in faint patterns. It looked less like growth. More like repair. At 0600 hours, Dr. Hannah Blake, head xenobiologist, entered the forward observation zone with protective clearance. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her visor. I need direct readings, she said, more to herself than anyone else. No interference from the drones. Ethan nodded once. You have 10 minutes. Hannah descended carefully into the outer crater slope with a field scanner. Every step she took registered abnormal environmental shifts. Soil microbiome is rebuilding, she muttered. That's impossible. There's no seed stock, no residual organic structure. Her scanner beeped sharply. She froze. The radiation isn't just decreasing, she said into her comm, it's being converted. I don't know how else to say this, it's like the energy is being rewritten into biological compatibility. Mark's voice came through the channel. Rewritten by what mechanism? Hannah looked up toward the center of the crater. The creature had not moved much overnight. But it was awake now. Watching her. She hesitated. By it, she whispered. Ethan stepped forward on the ridge above. Dr. Blake, maintain distance. But Hannah didn't step back. Because something about the creature was wrong in a way that didn't feel dangerous. It felt exhausted. Like it had been doing something for too long without stopping. The creature shifted slightly. Then, for the first time since its emergence, it tried to move toward her. It failed halfway. Collapsed forward. Hannah instinctively rushed closer before she could stop herself. Don't approach. Mark shouted. But it was too late. She was already inside the inner radius. The creature lay on its side, trembling. Up close, its form was even more strange. Not symmetrical in a human way, but not chaotic either. Like something built from principles they didn't recognize. Its skin pulsed faintly with light, not emitted, but responding. As if it reacted to its surroundings rather than producing anything itself. Hannah slowly lowered her scanner. I'm reading extreme biological depletion, she whispered. It's not just injured. It's spent. Ethan's voice came sharp through comms. Get out of there. Now. But Hannah didn't move. Because the creature had turned its head toward her hand. And then, slowly, it lifted one trembling limb. It touched the ground beside her. There was no flash. No explosion. No visible energy discharge. But the effect was immediate. The soil beneath Hannah's boots softened. Then changed. Cracked ash became fine, breathable earth. And in that earth, something green pushed upward. A single thread of life forcing its way through death. Hannah froze completely. Her scanner dropped slightly in her grip. That's not possible. The creature trembled harder now. Not violently. Not aggressively. But weakly. Like the act of doing it had cost it more than anything else before. Ethan's voice cut through again, urgent. Blake, retreat. That's an order. Hannah finally stepped back, but slowly, unwillingly, her eyes locked on the growing patch of green. It's not attacking, she said. It's responding. Mark's voice was tense. Responding to what? Hannah swallowed. To us. A pause. The creature lifted its head slightly again. This time, it looked past her. Toward the damaged earth beyond the crater. And the ground responded again. Another pulse, not visible, but undeniable. A ripple of change moved outward from the creature's position. Where it passed, the world shifted. Not healed instantly, but reorganized. Like something broken remembering its original shape. Ethan clenched his jaw. Pull her out. Now. But Hannah was already backing away on her own. Not because of fear. Because she finally understood the cost. This isn't energy release, she said quietly. It's transfer. It's giving something up every time it does this. Mark frowned. Giving up what? Hannah looked down at the creature again. Its body had become even dimmer. Less defined. Like light fading from a dying flame. Or itself, she said. The crater fell into silence again. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. The creature remained still now, barely moving. But the land around it was no longer dead. It was waking. Slowly. Painfully. And at the center of it all, something small was paying for every second of it. The first argument started before sunrise. By noon, it had turned into a crisis meeting involving 3 governments and a sealed military channel no one outside the facility was supposed to know existed. Commander Ethan Cole stood at the edge of the command tent while voices overlapped behind him. Scientists, officers, political envoys all fighting over the same impossible subject. The creature. Or what some had started calling, unofficially, the anomaly source. Dr. Hannah Blake sat with her tablet frozen on the last set of readings. She hadn't spoken in nearly 20 minutes. Sergeant Mark Davis broke first. We can't just sit on this, he said sharply. We're watching it rewrite a dead zone into a habitable biome in real time. That's not observation, that's potential global-scale application. Hannah looked up immediately. Application. Mark gestured at the data. Energy conversion, environmental restoration, radiation neutralization, if we isolate the mechanism. There is no mechanism, she interrupted. Everything has a mechanism. No, Hannah said quietly. Not like this. That silenced the room for a moment. Ethan finally turned. Report. Hannah hesitated, then brought up the live model. The creature isn't emitting energy, she said. It's not releasing a stored field or triggering a reaction cascade. Every time it heals something, its own biological structure degrades. It's not converting energy. It's transferring mass state integrity. Mark frowned. That's not a thing. It is now, she said. Ethan stepped closer. Explain it in terms we understand. Hannah exhaled slowly. It is taking damage from the environment and absorbing it into itself. Then it restructures the environment into a stable state, and in doing so, it loses part of its own structure. A pause. Mark shook his head. That still sounds like energy exchange. It's not energy, she said firmly. It's existence. It's stability. It's sacrificing its own physical coherence to restore ours. Silence spread through the tent. Outside, wind pressed against reinforced fabric walls, like the world itself leaning in to listen. Ethan looked down at the last image feed. The creature was still in the crater. Still alive. But weaker than before. Much weaker. Its form flickered slightly on the screen, as if the signal itself struggled to hold it together. And yet, around it, life continued returning. Grass now formed faint rings in the crater's inner basin. Soil composition charts showed microbial resurgence. Atmospheric toxins were dropping at a rate that defied geological explanation. The world was healing. At a cost no one wanted to name. Ethan spoke quietly. Has it attempted communication? Hannah hesitated. Not in language. But there's something. A pattern. Emotional imprinting, maybe. Mark scoffed. You're saying it feels? I'm saying, she replied, it responds to intent. It reacts differently when observed with hostility versus neutrality, and when someone approaches it without fear. She stopped. Ethan narrowed his eyes. What happens? Hannah looked down at her hands. It tries harder. That phrase hit harder than anything else in the room. Mark looked uncomfortable. That doesn't make sense. Why would it respond to perception? Ethan didn't take his eyes off the screen. Because it knows it's being watched. A new voice cut in over the secure channel. Containment proposal is ready, said a government liaison. We can deploy adaptive restraint fields within 6 hours. If we stabilize the subject, we can begin controlled study. Hannah's head snapped up. Controlled study? Yes. If we prevent further environmental alteration, we can extract biological samples before full systemic collapse. There was a pause. Ethan's voice dropped. Systemic collapse of what? No one answered immediately. Because everyone already knew. The creature. Hannah stood abruptly. You're talking about stopping it from healing the planet. The liaison responded calmly. We're talking about controlling an unknown variable with global implications. Ethan turned slightly, voice cold. And the cost? Silence. Then the liaison answered anyway. Acceptable. That word landed heavier than any explosion. Hannah stepped forward. You don't understand what you're doing. It's not a resource. It's not a tool. It's an anomaly that fell from orbit and altered a planetary impact site, the liaison interrupted. And it will be contained. Mark glanced at Ethan. Sir, orders? Ethan didn't respond immediately. He looked at the screen again. At the crater. At the small, fading form in the center of it. Still moving. Still trying. Still healing. Even now. Even as its outline flickered, as if reality itself was struggling to maintain its presence. And then Ethan saw something he hadn't noticed before. Every time the creature healed a section of ground, it hesitated slightly longer afterward. Like the effort to recover itself was increasing. Like the cost was compounding. He spoke quietly. It's accelerating. Hannah turned to him sharply. Yes. It is. Mark frowned. Accelerating what? The degradation, she said. Each act of healing is costing it more than the last. It's not linear. It's exponential. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his decision was made. No containment fields, he said. The room went silent. The liaison's voice turned sharp. Commander Cole, that is a direct refusal of. I said no, Ethan repeated. Mark stared at him. Sir, that's career ending. Ethan didn't look at him. Maybe. Hannah stepped closer. Ethan. He finally turned to her. And for the first time, his expression wasn't tactical. It was human. If we stop it, he said quietly, the world stops healing. A pause. And if we let it continue? Mark asked. Ethan looked back at the screen. The creature shifted slightly in the crater. And another faint wave of change spread outward. Green expanding into gray. Life replacing death. But slower now. So much slower. Ethan answered finally. Then we watch it disappear doing what we couldn't. No one spoke after that. Because below them, in the center of a broken world, something small kept giving itself away. One piece at a time. The order to contain it never officially came. It simply stopped being enforceable. By the time the political chain of command stabilized enough to authorize deployment, the situation on the ground had already changed beyond procedural reach. And beyond comprehension. Commander Ethan Cole stood alone on the ridge above the crater for the first time in days. No active alarms. No drone swarms. No overlapping commands in his ear. Just wind. And silence. Below him, the crater was no longer a wound. It had become something else entirely. A basin of renewal. Grass had spread in uneven rings from the center outward, no longer just faint threads but real growth, thin, pale, struggling at the edges, stronger near the core. Soil that had been glassed and dead was now darkening into something alive again. And in the center, the creature remained. Or what was left of it. It was smaller now. So much smaller. Where once it had barely stood, now it could no longer lift itself fully. Its form flickered in and out of definition, like reality struggled to maintain consistency around it. But it was still moving. Still healing. Even now. Dr. Hannah Blake arrived beside Ethan without a word. She didn't need to ask what had changed. The answer was visible across the entire landscape. "I've never seen regeneration like this," she whispered. "Not just biological. Geological. Atmospheric. It's rewriting layers of environmental history." Ethan didn't respond. Because he was watching the center. And understanding something no one wanted to say out loud. Every pulse from the creature was weaker than the last. But the effects were expanding. Not shrinking. Mark Davis came up behind them, voice low. "We lost contact with the containment teams." Ethan nodded slightly. "There's nothing left to contain." Mark frowned. "Sir?" Ethan finally spoke. "It's already everywhere." A silence followed that statement. Not fear. Not confusion. Recognition. Because they could all see it now. The crater wasn't isolated anymore. Across the outer perimeter, satellite imaging showed subtle environmental shifts beginning to propagate outward in faint, branching patterns. Dead soil in distant zones showing early signs of microbial return. Water tables stabilizing. Toxic plumes thinning. The effect was spreading. Slowly. But inevitably. Hannah stepped forward slightly. "It's not moving outward by distance," she said quietly. "It's propagating by connection. Like the environment is learning how to heal from itself." Mark shook his head. "That's not science." Hannah looked at him. "Neither is what we've been watching for the last week." Below them, the creature shifted again. It attempted to rise. Failed. And instead of collapsing harshly this time, it simply settled. Like even falling had become too much effort. But still, it continued. Another pulse. Another wave of correction through the land. And with it, another visible change. A small cluster of flowers, not Earth native, not catalogued, broke through the soil near the crater's inner edge. Then another cluster farther out. Then another. Life was not returning. It was learning itself again. Ethan spoke quietly. "How long does it have?" Hannah hesitated. Then answered honestly. "I don't think it's measuring time anymore." Mark frowned. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one we have," she replied. The wind shifted slightly. And for a moment, something passed through the air, not sound, not light, but presence. Ethan felt it first. Like pressure behind the eyes. Like memory that wasn't his. A feeling. Not words. Not language. But understanding. And it was coming from below. He stepped forward instinctively, stopping at the ridge edge. Hannah noticed immediately. "Ethan?" But he didn't respond. Because the feeling had sharpened. It wasn't directed at him alone anymore. It was broader now. Expanding. Touching everything nearby. The land. The air. The water beneath the soil. Even them. And within it, a final impression formed. Not a message. A state of being. "They are broken." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Then opened them again. Below, the creature had lifted its head slightly. Just enough. Just barely. And the ground responded one last time. A wave passed outward from the crater. But this one was different. Not correction. Not restoration. Completion. The surrounding landscape shifted in a wide radius. The dead zones beyond the original impact site began to soften, then green. Entire stretches of barren earth responding as if a long-forgotten system had been restarted. And in the center of it all, the creature dimmed. Hannah stepped forward. "No." Mark whispered, "It's going critical." But Ethan didn't move. Because he understood now. It wasn't collapse. It wasn't failure. It was release. The creature was not dying like something being destroyed. It was finishing something it had chosen to begin. Another pulse. Weaker. Then another. Even weaker. Each one smaller than the last, but each one spreading further than the previous. Until finally, the creature stopped moving. Completely. The crater fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hesitate again. Ethan stood very still. Hannah's voice broke first. "Is it gone?" No one answered immediately. Because there was no body to confirm. No remains. No trace of structure. Only the land itself, fully changed now. No longer dead. No longer wounded. Just alive. Everywhere the crater's influence had reached, the world was different. Soil composition stabilized. Atmosphere purified. Early ecosystems forming in places that should have taken centuries to recover. Mark looked out across the transformed land. We did this? Ethan shook his head slowly. No, he said quietly. We watched it. A long silence followed. Then Hannah spoke again, softer now. What was it? Ethan stared into the crater one last time. Where something impossible had fallen. And given everything it had. I don't think it came to survive here, he said. Mark looked at him. Then why did it come? Ethan paused. And answered simply. To teach a broken world how to heal. The wind moved across the crater. And for the first time since the impact. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like beginning.